There is nothing more frustrating than getting to day 31 or even 32 and see nothing, no fur pulled, no real nest made, and then you really did expect your doe acted like she was pregnant. You maybe even felt babies through palpation, but then nothing. So unfortunately, this happened to me twice this month. So I want to talk about the ways or reasons. Obviously, with anything in rabbits, it's just a lot of speculation or assumption, and you have to just reasonably detect what potentially happened and pick up the pieces and move on. And so let's look into why I think it can happen. With this case, it's just been a rough year. And so you just got to pick up the pieces and keep moving forward. So Ava here and Millie, which are both two of my very experienced does, have had proven litters before. They know what they're doing. They've raised excellent litters. Both of them were bred and didn't deliver, or as the case with Ava here, she ended up delivering one kit 7 days past her date. And of course, it was DOA and not looking pretty. So there is something called a false pregnancy, or like when you do an internet search, they also will call it a phantom pregnancy. And in this case, it can be the things where the does they'll look pregnant, they'll maybe even behave better and nicer than compared to before they were bred. And if you're not aware of this, does for the most part will turn grouchy when they haven't been bred or had a litter recently. And then they get nicer, usually a little bit nicer when they're pregnant, but then they get even nicer after they've had a litter. So all that to say, you start to see the signs and everything goes according to plan, except for the fact that if you tried to palpate them, they usually you won't feel babies. It's just their body responds as if it thinks it's pregnant or bred, but then they're not. And they'll even sometimes go as far as pulling fur and building a nest and all of that, but usually the time distance is right around 20 days. They don't go the full 30 or whatever. So a lot of times you can figure that out a little bit quicker. And a lot of times that is just because either the buck was temporarily infertile because maybe it was hot and his swimmers, didn't work, whatever that case may be, or you didn't fully get a good fall off. And so that is when the buck does his job and he'll grunt and fall to side. For the most part, it's side to side of the doe. And so just the humping does not count. Don't ever count that. So if you did, that might have been the problem too. So in this instance, for both of the does, I palpated them, felt kits or like on their due date. They were firm. They were the normal size that they should be. When you do palpate, I've done it around 20 days. And usually I expect the size of a seeded grape at that point. But on the due date, there should be like not the thickness of 2, but like 1.5 width. And then they should be like about that long at least. So I usually, and I don't care if I feel more than 1, I just want to feel 1 to help confirm the pregnancy, but I usually don't do it that often just because it's 30 days. Like you wait a little bit longer and you'll know. And I've never been good at it, especially as good as, or as big as they are. The kids can hide in so many spots and who cares, I can just wait a couple more days and I'll see the results. In 10 days, as far as rebreeding them again or not, is not that long in the grand scheme of things. If you want to try and palpate them, what you would do, try and get them, of course she's going to lay down on me, is, now these are so big, most people will go up and under their hips, but because of how big she is, I will just feel underneath. Let me back her up a little. Up underneath, you can see my fingers under here, just around the belly. And if I can feel about a 2-seeded grape size lump, then I know I'm good. But if it's smaller than that, then I know it's because their turds are like 2 pea size, kind of. So if it's that small and it's round, we know we're not talking about babies, right? So like I said, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, is it really worth trying to figure it out? If you're trying to produce for food, maybe. That's a whole nother story. Here's my little bit of encouragement to you if you have breeding issues or just it's not working out, is sometimes the year is just not meant to be. Because I posted about the situation on my Facebook page, how these last 2 litters didn't go. And I also asked from other breeders, how was the year going for them? Sometimes I think years are just going to be bad, and you've got to keep your head above water and get through it. And that's what this post showed to me as well, was that the other breeders were having issues, completely missed litters or breedings. Some litters were smaller, which has been my case most of the time this year, as well as situations like this where they just didn't work at all. And while she has had 2, potentially 3 other litters, she was still in a pretty high kit count. And so I knew she wasn't like getting to the end of her production years yet. And so if you're not aware of what can happen, rabbits are born with as many eggs or kits as they're going to have. And so they tend to start dropping in number the more they've been bred. And so usually when they go from like 5 to 6, then they'll go down to like 2 or 3. Then, you know, they're starting to get less and they're probably getting to the end of the thing. But she's had at least 5 every time. So I knew that she should be fine. It was just a weird year. Now on the flip side, I'm also letting go of a doe that she has only had 1 litter before. It was only like 3. It wasn't that great. Her breeding before this last one, where she only had 1. This isn't her. I'm not gesturing to her. But then she had just 1 completely unsuccessful litter before that. So there are does in that situation where if their history is not good, then that might be an indication you should let them go. But when it's does like this that are proven, they've done well multiple times, you know, it's just a year you need to keep your head above water. So let me go into some things that I don't do during pregnancies to at least encourage the best outcome possible. So all of this is just my years of reasonable deduction, and I would rather be more cautious when it doesn't cost me any more effort to do so and hope you set myself up for the best results, right? So a lot of times I will do my very best if we've got the space to put the doe, this is our travel carrier cages, but I will put the doe in her delivery cage. So we have doe and litter cages, which is the technical term in the rabbit breeding world. And so they're bigger, there's more space. And so I will put them in before they're even bred, at least a week beforehand, if at all possible. And so that way they're not moving the even though they're still here on the farm, like they don't have a new neighbor, they don't have a new cage that they're in that smells like other rabbits, just anything to not upset the apple cart. Because the one doe that didn't deliver, she doesn't like her neighbors very well. She's great as far as humans, but she don't like other rabbits. So I never want her to get next to a neighbor that just causes her to be a grump and they're picking at each other. So things like that you can prep yourself or prep them for. Then the other thing is I don't do treats at all. I don't give herbs for sure. Definitely no kind of anything that leans herb direction or could have medicinal properties, because a couple of years in my early years of using herbs with the rabbits, I had given a doe, and it took her like 2 or 3 breedings before she bred again, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together that basil is not recommended for pregnant animals or anything like that. So I don't care if it's lavender. I don't give them anything unless they absolutely need it and it's detrimental to their health. They don't get anything as far as herbs or, treatment of any kind. Just because rabbits are so funny that anything can happen. It's really hard to know what caused it. And then the other thing is I won't switch up their food. If I'm going to switch the brand, I'll do it in the winter months when I'm less likely to breed, so that their body gets used to it and starts adjusting long before breeding season ever happens. And so this was another reason why I was asking out on the Facebook page, was because I had started adding Mana Pro Calf Mana feed supplement, mixing it like very little amounts into the feed. But I was starting to think maybe that was part of the cause. But I had already had a couple litters before I started doing that and was already starting to have some issues. So, it's just little things that you got to try and change one thing at a time and see what happens. Don't blow up your entire routine and then wonder what's causing what. And so just don't change up their feed. Try and keep everything as consistent and normal as possible. So what do you do next if it didn't work out as well? So there's in a couple of these situations where she did deliver a kit, but not in a good situation, but she's not also raising it either. I will, for her, wait about 10 days before I breed her again. Just because if she has to pass anything else, I don't want to breed her and have kids bred in an environment that maybe there's something else in there, like the afterbirth, or maybe there's another kit in there that just hasn't come out yet that I don't want in there with the other kits, right? That I want to succeed. But in the other case where the doe didn't deliver anything, now this was just because of how hot it was, but I would have bred her again within 5 to 7 days after the 31 days of her due date. So like if she didn't have anything on 31, then I would breed her on like day 39, something like that, because that gives her a little bit longer of a time just in case they run late, because the last 2 years we've been on day 33 almost consistently to where they've had the kids. So you never know, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, but I'll at least rebreed one that hasn't delivered anything 7 days after the fact if I want to get things moving. Now we're in September, so I want to get the litters born and solid before we start getting really cold temperatures. Sometimes there is just nothing you can do to change the outcome, and it's just part of the deal. I have been in it long enough to develop the skill of enjoyment without attachment. And so that is where you enjoy them, but you don't let your heart get involved. And so it's kind of like when you meet a new person. You don't fully trust them right away, but you enjoy their company. You can talk to them. You can enjoy the conversation. And so try to practice that. I know we are in a world where emotions are the leading driver of almost everything these days, but you have to learn to control that. Emotions should never drive the bus in anything. So try to just practice it and go, I know that there might be some problems when I start breeding rabbits. What am I going to do if it happens? I'll clean up the mess, walk away for a couple hours, see, and then keep going from there, you know? So just be ready for it. And these situations are a lot of the reason why I use the litter tracking tool or my rabbitry journal notes in my rabbitry operating system, to where I can look back and see what happened, or start to maybe notice the flow of like about every 5 years or so, it starts, the breeding kind of just sucks and it doesn't work out. So I need to know, like, this is just my block season and I need to keep going. Or there are other situations where you can look back at the problem and be, was there a fix for it? What did I do back then? Because if you're like me and you've been in it for 15 plus years with this breed, raising rabbits for over 20, you're going to forget what happened early on. And so you need some form of system to keep track of those kinds of things. And if you want templates and tools handed over to you so you can set that up for yourself, I've got the rabbitry operating system in the description below. If you have had issues of breeding, I hope this gave you a little bit of encouragement, and just knowing that it's not always going to be super easy, but you can pick up the pieces and keep going. So if you found this helpful, share it with a friend who's just getting started, or is maybe like you, also having breeding issues. Share it with them as just an encouragement of like, keep going. Don't give up on your goals and your dreams.